Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Cabin Crafts. I've got a fun little video to do today. We're going to talk about General George Washington's Baker General. His name was Christopher Ludwick, and he was from Germany. He was born in 1720, and I've got this cute little book. Now, this is going to show up backwards because I'm on selfie mode, but it's called Gingerbread for Liberty. And this is the story of how a German baker helped win the American Revolution. I love these little stories that really don't make a lot of history, as far as like movies are not made about them, and you don't really learn about them in school. But I love the story of Christopher Ludwick. I got this little book and I would read it to my grandkids. It's very cute. In the back is even a gingerbread recipe. But we're going to talk a little bit about him. And then I'm going to tell you what I do with my gingerbread men. It's a very kept secret of mine. I haven't shared this with anyone before. And I thought of it all by myself. Someone else might have too, but I began doing it about 30 years ago, and I'll show you that at the end. But as I said, he was born in Germany in 1720. And he enlisted in the Austrian army, and you know, Europe at that time in the early 1700s, it was just war after war after war. And so he was served in the Austro-Russian-Turkish War, and he endured the hardships of a grueling 17-week-long battle known as the Siege of Prague. And when the French and Bavarians captured Prague in 1741, he was conscripted into the Prussian army. And when peace was finally declared, he decided to leave continental Europe, and he went to England. And in 1742, he joined the British Royal Navy. He seems to have served as a baker aboard the HMS Duke of Cumberland until 1745, and then a merchant marine. In 1753, he sailed to Philadelphia with 25 pounds and some clothing. His time in Philadelphia was spent as a baker, which proved to be very lucrative for him. With the 60 pounds he had earned by this venture, he returned to London, where he continued his work as a baker. He learned new skills. He was learning new baking techniques and stuff, and was making confections and special cakes for the wealthy people of London. So, equipped with all of this new baking knowledge, he comes back to Philadelphia and expanded his business as a gingerbread baker and confectioner located in Letitia Court, where he amassed a great fortune. He married Catherine England in 1755. He owned 4 or 5 homes in Philadelphia and a farm in Germantown, Pennsylvania. Now, Germantown would later become a battle in the Revolutionary War, a battlefield. Him and his wife had one child who died in infancy, unfortunately. So when it was time for the American Revolution, he was a staunch advocate of the American Revolution, and he, when it had been proposed by Major General Thomas Mifflin to purchase firearms by private subscription or require the individual to buy their own guns, this caused some dissent among the American patriots, especially those who didn't have enough money to buy their own guns for the war. So Ludwick was able to silence their opposition by saying, "Let the poor gingerbread baker be put down for 200 pounds. And so the proposition was adopted unanimously, and in the summer of 1776, he enlisted as a volunteer at the age of 55. You're never too old. So anyway, he was of immeasurable service to the cause of the American Revolution by persuading his fellow Germans, which was Hessian mercenaries that came to fight for King George. They were fighting on the side of Great Britain, to desert and become residents of Philadelphia instead. Now, interestingly enough, when I did my video on the Tea Party, the Boston Tea Party, there was a really good show on Fox Nation hosted by Rob Lowe, and the famous actor. And his great-great-great-great-grandfather was a Hessian soldier in Philadelphia at the time. And I'm just wondering and he changed sides and fought for the Patriots. I wonder if Christopher Ludwick got to him, to Rob Lowe's ancestor. That would be cool to find out. But anyway, he caused some of them to desert and fight for the Americans. And upon learning of the capture of 8 Hessian soldiers who were taken prisoners during the Battle of Germantown, he went to the military headquarters and convinced the commander-in-chief to place those 8 men in his hands, in his custody. Then he took it upon himself to serve as their host and guide. He showed them all about Philadelphia, and he was able to show these 8 men how well the citizens of German heritage were prospering there in Pennsylvania. And we know that Pennsylvania was a hotbed of German immigration. And my own German ancestors, that's where they went, was to Pennsylvania. So he pointed out how comfortably the German families of the area were housed, what fine churches they had. He spoke of the freedom and independence they had to pursue their own avocations in Philadelphia without intrusion from the government. Even those who were in humbler pursuits of life were living happily in America. When he dismissed those 8 men, he charged them with the sole purpose of returning to their regiments to inform their fellow soldiers of everything they saw. He encouraged them to describe the happiness awaiting those who would desert their service to fight for Great Britain and settle in Pennsylvania. The seed was planted and bore rich fruit. It is said that Ludwig's influence on those few 8 men resulted in many, many Germans who decided to become citizens of Philadelphia and who afterwards became prosperous citizens of their time. It says that it encouraged him to similar endeavors in that same vein. For example, he visited a Hessian's camp on Staten Island, New York, without detection, and was able to cause some of the German soldiers there to join him in Philadelphia. The fact remains that Ludwig's influence on the success of the American Revolution cannot be overstated. He was very instrumental in advancing the cause without a lot of bloodshed. But he also was invited to dine at George Washington's large dinner parties, and frequently their conversations went to bread supply for the army. One of his notable achievements was his prompt execution of Washington's orders. Washington had defeated British Army officer Charles Cornwallis at the Siege of Yorktown, which ended on the 19th of October, 1781. After the surrender of Cornwallis, General Washington ordered that Ludwick be responsible for feeding his hungry men. He baked 6,000 pounds of bread in one day with the help of his loving and supportive wife, Catherine. They were able to provide much needed nourishment to the soldiers of Washington after that particularly long battle. That is just one simple but appreciated staple, bread. I mean, bread will fill your tummy when you're really hungry. Washington usually addressed Ludwig in the company as my honest friend. In 1785, he was given a certificate of good conduct by General Washington, which was written by Washington's own hand. And he realized the importance of his invaluable service to the army. He called him his Baker General. He spent a good deal of his later life in service to others. And if he discovered that there were those in need of a worthwhile charity to which he could lend his assistance, he did as much as he possibly could to contribute either time or money in aiding their circumstance. In 1793, Philadelphia was hit hard by the yellow fever epidemic, and he worked tirelessly at baking bread to feed those who were sick or destitute. On his death in 1801, at the age of 81, he bequeathed $13,000, that's $6 million in today's money, to fund a charitable trust for the schooling and education of poor children of all denominations in the city and liberties of Philadelphia, without exception to the country, extraction, or religious principles of their parents or friends. Based in Bryn Mawr, the Christopher Ludwick Foundation remains active in its mission to the present day. He is buried in the cemetery of St. Michael's Lutheran Church in Philadelphia. I love this story. 55 years old, enlisted as a volunteer in the American Revolution. And even though he was probably too old to fight, he did what he could to support the American cause, even by convincing his German compatriots to change sides. And like I said, I love the story of Rob Lowe's grandfather, that he was one of those Hessian mercenaries that was captured at the Battle of Trenton. You know, when Washington and his men crossed the Delaware River on Christmas night and attacked Trenton, and they took prisoners. And Rob Lowe's grandfather was one of those prisoners, and he changed sides. And I just, like I said, I can't help but wonder if Christopher Ludwick got to him and said, hey, you know, you have opportunity here. You can live however you want. In Europe, everything was based on, primogeniture, which means that the eldest son got everything. And so lower sons, second, third, fourth born sons, all they could do was maybe make a career in the military or become a member of parliament or something like that. But here in America, everyone had the chance to be on equal footing. You could amass a great fortune, as we see that Christopher Ludwick did. So I encourage you to find this little book, Gingerbread for Liberty. I think it's on Amazon. It's written by Mara Rockcliffe, and the pictures in it are just delightful. Everything looks like a cookie. Isn't that sweet? And we need to read these books to our kids and our grandkids, because let me tell you, they're not learning liberty and patriotism in school. That is being squashed. American history is watered down, and we're not taught how important it is. We're 3 years away from the sesquicentennial of the United States, 250th anniversary. I was alive during the bicentennial in 1976. I was 12 years old, and I can remember what a wonderful feeling of patriotism there was in the atmosphere, even the years leading up to 1976. Here we are 3 years away. You got college kids pulling down statues. You got college kids calling our founders, racist things. And yes, a lot of them owned slaves, but many of them didn't. And like I said, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. America has its flaws. She's not perfect, but we don't live in a perfect world. And when we're in a world run by human beings, and until Jesus comes to rule and reign, this is not going to be utopia on earth. Never. So until he comes. And so anyway, teach these things to your kids and your grandkids, or your nieces or your nephews, or even your neighbors. I don't care. But we need to get the word out that this still is a great country. It's a generous country. And whenever another country's in aid, who is the first to come to their aid? America. And I'm proud of that. And I get so upset when I see statues being pulled down. I don't care if they were Confederate generals or whatever. It's a part of our history. The Jews have not torn down Auschwitz, the most painful reminder of the most devastating genocide in the history of the world. But it's there so that they can remember why it's there and teach it to their descendants. So we need to do the same thing in America. We need to quit throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which means you throw all of history out because a few people, did something that we think today is immoral. And I'm not for slavery. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. I don't think that slavery is right. But at that time, slavery was constitutionally protected, and you couldn't just free your slaves if you wanted to. There were laws against it. So. And what they fail to tell you is George Washington, for instance, freed all of his slaves upon his death in his will, and he also left them a monetary stipend to start a new life. Now, he couldn't free all of the slaves because some of them were Martha's slaves from her first marriage. They were called dower slaves, and his slaves intermarried with her slaves, and so the only ones that he could free upon his death were his own that he inherited from his family. But then Martha went ahead and did the same. And so then they were all emancipated. They all received a monetary stipend to start a new life. They won't teach you that in the school books. But on to gingerbread again. So I love to make gingerbread. And in my shop, I sell these little gingerbread ornaments. This is real gingerbread. It's got a big star anise in his belly. And he's got little juniper berry eyes. Sometimes I put raisins down their belly, or, even candy red hots for his heart. But then my secret is I dip these in wax. And I usually don't tell people that. Unless you come in the store, you can probably guess. But when I started doing this, I was making the Moravian stars. And I was at a historical Christmas walk at a historical park up in St. Louis, and we all had our handmade items, and a lot of it was out of reach for children. And you all know that kids have a soft spot in my heart. I have a soft spot for kids. So I was dipping the stars in wax, and I thought, you know what? I will make gingerbread ornaments, because there was a lot of Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops coming through, and they had a couple of dollars and they couldn't buy anything. So I started making the gingerbread men, and while I had my wax melted, I started dipping them in wax, which actually preserves them. And I've got some at home that are from the 90s. Unless you have a dog or a cat or an animal that will eat them, they'll last for years because they've been sealed in wax. And so, as you can see, it doesn't affect the look of them at all. It's very real gingerbread. It's a real cookie. And so when Ludwick made his gingerbread cookies, he would have probably used hand-carved wooden cookie boards. And I don't have any. Last year, Justine did a video on some 2 big cookie boards that she had. They were like really big. But my Springerly molds are the closest thing I have. So this is the biggest one I've got. This is a Father Christmas. And this is a resin cast of an antique hand-carved mold. So you can see the wood grain in it. And this would have been hand-carved, and then they made a resin cast of it. And that's what I sell on my website as Springerly molds. And they come with the little recipe booklet. So for these kinds of molds, whether it be a wooden cookie board or a resin mold, you need really stiff doughs. You can't put sugar cookies in here. So the little recipe booklet comes with, of course, Springerly, which is a German cookie that's flavored with anise. But then there's also gingerbread in here, and there is shortbread. The shortbread is a very stiff dough. Speculoos, that's those windmill cookies with the almonds on them. It's a spicy cookie. I love those. And Frankfurter Breton, which is an almond cookie, which is very stiff. So obviously you've got to have a stiff dough. So that's my cute little video today about Christopher Ludwick. Look him up and read about him. Get this book for your kids, Gingerbread for Liberty, and make some gingerbread men Christmas ornaments. And you can dip them in wax, and they will last for years and years and years. I store mine in like a Rubbermaid container, a little plastic Rubbermaid container with a lid. So I hope you enjoyed this quick little history about the Revolutionary War and our Baker General. And thanks for watching. Goodbye.